County Board of Supervisors has now come to order. We'd like to welcome you here tonight, and we want to hear from you, the public, tonight. Mr. Bowen, will you give us the invocation, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Father, let's go to the Lord. Father, again, we thank you for this time that we can just come together. We thank you for this beautiful spring day. And Lord, we know that if it's your will, there'll be many other days just like this. And we just rest in that assurance. Lord, tonight we're here to hear about money. Father, we know that many times in the Bible, you gave examples of money because that means a lot to man, but it doesn't mean so much to you. Now we ask you to just open our hearts and be willing to receive what people have got to say. Through Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen.
We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The purpose of this meeting is to hear from you, the citizens of Nottoway County, concerning the proposed budget for 21. We'll now have Katie to do an overview of the budget, please.
Kind of weird standing on this side. All right, so I did this just a little different. I've done each fund together, revenues and expenditures, in my statements, my comments. So if I need to slow down, say so. If something doesn't make sense, stop me, okay?
Okay.
Let's see, first off, thank you guys for, I guess, trusting us, the staff, with this. It was fun. Thank y'all for at the meetings, for your input, your feedback, constructive comments, your willingness to say, hey, don't do this or do this. I appreciated it. And I guess lastly, I should say thank you to the girls in the office who kept me pretty grounded and didn't let me have a nervous breakdown before I got this done. Okay, so I did my very best to do this as a needs-based budget. Obviously, last year was very notable for many reasons, but it was a little difficult trying to gauge and estimate and project with the scenario of the pandemic. Have we seen it all? Have we not? We really don't know yet. But I used projected revenues based on current collections, preceding trends. I did the same thing with the expenditures. I was probably a little more cautious on the revenue side than the expenditures, just because I'm so much more familiar with what the county spends money on. So let's start off with what's important. The proposed fiscal year 22 budget that you all instructed staff to advertise for the public hearing is balanced, totaling $39,996,306. You guys instructed to balance the budget to use county reserves to do so. That required $1,279,297 to do so. There is no proposed change in the tax rates or the levies. They all remain the same as they did the prior year, and I'll go over those. The proposed levy on real estate is 48 cents per hundred evaluation. The levy on tangible personal property is $3.75 per hundred evaluation. Mobile homes is 48 cents per hundred evaluation. Machinery and tools, $1.35 per hundred. Merchants capital, there is no level, as well as farm machinery, implements, and equipment. Motor vehicles specially equipped to provide transportation for physically handicapped, that is $2.35 per hundred evaluation. Aircraft is $1 per hundred, and emergency services vehicles is a rate for $1 per hundred evaluation for one vehicle. The personal property tax relief remains 60%. That equates to $1,049,790, and it should be noted, which it typically is every year, that the county does give more credit than it's required to. So when I began preparing the budget, I knew that there were things, and I say things very liberally, that needed to be changed. Categories, structural things is where things were in the budget. what they were called, those types of things. I tried to change as many as I could, just time-wise. I didn't get them all done. So there are things that, and a couple of them are noted through here, that I do want to fix moving forward. As far as the proposed budget itself, so like I said, I did the funds together. The general fund revenue and expenditures are balanced at $13,413,911. For revenue, so just the highlights here. And believe it or not, I tried to abbreviate this, but when I got to page 3, I figured I failed. So I've talked with the commissioner, I've talked with the treasurer, I've talked with a great deal of people trying to do this and do it right. I have learned a lot of things that I thought I knew. I've learned things I didn't know. I enjoyed it. Commissioner Hudson told me that she has a notable amount of new construction that has not been assessed to be taxed yet. I've used that in my projections for the real estate as well. There were the current collections for the real and personal property for the Public Service Corporation. They were noticeably exceeding what was budgeted for the year, so I increased those. The Department of Taxation, they had distributed in March projections reflecting an increase in the sales tax for the coming year, which is a little surprising. So that's reflected in the figures. Permits, fees, and licenses, there is expected growth. We see it all the time in the office with building permits as far as people building multifamily structures, commercial, people are talking hotels all the time. So there's an expected increase in building permits and those associated filing fees. I've taken that into consideration. Your revenue from the use of money, your interest on your bank deposits. I hope I wasn't too optimistic on that, but I tried to be as realistic as possible. The revenue from use of property includes the rent on all of the LRA properties. Let's see, miscellaneous revenue. This is where the transfer from the reserves that you all requested that was needed, that's where that's placed in the budget for the revenue. Non-categorical aid. This category includes the new revenue source from the Gaming Commission. That's what they call the game of skills that you see in the convenience stores, restaurants, those types of things. We are seeing revenue from that. This is also where the reimbursement from the Commonwealth for the Personal Property Tax Relief Act is. Shared expenses, this is the receipts from the Commonwealth for the 5 constitutional offices. It also includes the State Board of Elections reimbursement that we get for the registrar and the electoral board. Other categorical aid, it includes the reimbursement from the Commonwealth for the transport and housing of the residents of ECBR at Piedmont Regional Jail. It also includes the state aid grant for the public library. The non-revenue receipts, this is where the past administration used to reflect the use of reserves in the budget. That's why there's no figure there. For general fund expenditures, under, again, all just notable things here because you can all see what you have. Under Board of Supervisors, there is $150,000 placed in the discretionary fund. There's an amount there placed every year. There was a 4% overall increase in the employer-sponsored health insurance plan that we budgeted for. We know there's going to be an increase, but because of the timing of how that's done, there's no real way of knowing. So the proposed employer contribution for the health insurance is proposed to be increased from $6,200 per employee to $6,450 per employee. In the County Administrator Department, that budget, in the past, the County Administrator's salary was distributed or split, however you describe it, between 4 different departmental budgets. That's ridiculous. I've changed that. So all of those salaries are reflected in one budget line. There's also a staff member in our office, for whatever reason, her salary was taken from, was categorized in the 911 budget. She's paid from the same line. There's no use in moving money. I've put everybody where they belong. There is funding included for the first time in the budget for staff training for administrative staff. We need it. I hope you will support that. We're eager and energetic to do so. There are funds included for a potential part-time position for the administrator's office. If hired, This position would ideally serve as kind of a when needed, where needed position. There are a lot of things that happen in our office that if at times we just had a little bit more help, everything could be much more efficient, faster, quicker, easy. So it's still not 100% certain that we need this position, but once we get our structure under us again and we can evaluate where we are, the potential is there. So there's funding included. Legal services, it's no secret that the county's legal services have increased. I have tried to accommodate for that. In that budget also includes new funding for Virginia Legal Aid Society, which you all instructed to fund. Data processing, this was one of the 4 categories that reflected a portion of the county administrator's salary. So the difference that's seen in what was advertised, that explains part of that. I have tried to include funding in that budget also. That's where we try to budget money for our technology upgrades in the office. I'm trying to work that in there, get everybody to a point where they could work remotely if we needed to. Should we have another scenario like the ice storm, the county doesn't have to stop. Also, we've been trying for a while, and it seems to be, the ability seems to be coming to fruition quicker than it had, that there's software, there's potential where we can allow, if we can utilize this and implement it the way it should be, citizens can have more flexibility in paying their taxes online, paying business licenses online, those types of things. So I'm excited about making that happen. It's a lot of legwork, but we're trying. As far as the electoral board and the registrar's budget, the governor's budget that was just signed includes an increase in funding for both positions, all 3 electoral board members as well as the general registrar. So once those figures are solidified, we will have to adjust those, and I'm hoping to have that finalized before you consider the budget for adoption next week. Commonwealth's attorney, her budget does include the grant funding for the victim witness coordinator. I just always like to note that, we continue to receive that grant funding, so we appreciate that. Emergency services coordinator, obviously this is new funding. The budget does include funding to hire a part-time coordinator, as you all have expressed interest in doing. We anticipate that, once this position is hired and settled in, and there's a method to their madness, we expect some kind of materials and supplies expense, and depending on what that is and when, we'll just readdress that then. The fire departments and the rescue service. So there is $25,000 additional contribution for equipment for all 3 fire departments in that budget. There's an additional $75,000 for Nottaway County Emergency Squad in the rescue service budget. I continue to fund the training budget of $10,000 every year. I spoke with representatives from both the jail and the detention home while doing this. Each has expressed that their expenses are going to obviously increase. And the governor's budget has played a little bit of part in that because of the proposed salary increases and those types of things that's in it. The detention home is planning to increase its per diem. She said potentially as much as 50%, that they haven't done that in a great number of years. So I've tried to accommodate for those. Animal control, there's funding in the budget in repairs and maintenance to repair, replace whatever the assessment is of the floor in the existing shelter, as well as a portable generator for the facility. There is $250,000 also included in this budget, as you all wanted to assist with the next phase, whatever that may be for the animal shelter project. In the maintenance budget, I have included $100,000 for use towards courthouse complex improvements, towards the facility study, however you guys feel best to use it if you choose. There was $100,000 budgeted this year for the same purpose, and that hasn't been used at all. Under the mental health, it includes full funding for both Crossroads Services Board and STEPS. Area Agency on Aging includes full funding for Piedmont Senior Resources, as well as funding for Southside Center for Violence Prevention, which everyone knows is Madeline's house. The reduction in debt service is substantial due to the school's literary loans being paid in full this past August. Now, the next category is one of those that I mentioned that really needs to be changed, restructured, renamed, however we do it. And I understand that the local contribution to the 3 towns for recreation is in this budget, this category. Nothing else really fits it. And that's the Parks and Recreation. So this category, albeit poorly named, includes the $1.5 million that the board asked to be set aside for capital improvements. It includes funding for Virginia Crossroads. It includes the Blackstone area bus service funding, which sees an increase this year. And it includes new funding for Piedmont Area Veterans Council, as well as Piedmont Habitat for Humanity, as you all instructed. Under Planning Commission, this includes the $19,000 dues to the Commonwealth Regional Council. It is also the second half of the update to the county's comprehensive plan has been included in that. They staged that over 2 fiscal years because the work was going to be done that way. Environmental management, we were paying someone part-time to perform the erosion and sediment control inspections. You all just changed that. Our building official now is doing that, so there's the elimination of that small expense. For Pickett LRA, there's funding included for a finishing mower, a power washer, and a trailer to transport lawn equipment that they struggle with now apparently between the properties out there. And a portion, I don't think all 3 of them, but there is a small possibility that 2 of those 3 may be able to be handled with remaining fiscal year 21 funds. And we will certainly stay on top of that if we can. It also includes funding to replace the exterior siding on the Officers Club and to either repair or replace the roof on Building 432. So that's your general fund budget. The local appropriation to the schools, they requested level funding that has been honored, as well as additional funding in the amount of $304,000, or $304,892 for A&TC. As you all heard them say, they're planning to expand existing classes and implement new classes. And I did try to get an update from the school on the required local effort, what that is currently estimated to be, and that is $3,649,482. The school fund revenue and expenditures are balanced at $24,364,854. The school food service fund revenue and expenditures are balanced at $1,189,381. The 911 fund revenue and expenditures are balanced at $117,060. All of these feature just normal. There's nothing, new. There's nothing notable. It's just standard items in both of those. The landfill fund, which in the advertised budget for expenditures shows as refuse collection. The revenue and expenditures for that fund are balanced at $907,500. Keep in mind that you all had a general discussion at some point in one of the work sessions about the possibility of extending the waste convenience site hours. Nobody ever made an official declaration as to whether you would or not, other than you would consider it. So in the landfill budget, what's accommodated in the part-time funding line does not include any additional funding for that. So if that's something you all choose to discuss and potentially take into consideration, we will need to revisit that. The landfill budget includes funding for a water truck for the county to begin hauling its own leachate again, as well as grounds improvements between the equipment building and the scale house. The planning grant fund revenue and expenditures are balanced at $3,600. And unless you have questions for me, this sums up the proposed budget. Let's turn it over to the people. Let's hear what they have to say, and I'll answer anything that they need answered, hopefully, as you guys instruct.
Katie, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
For your first time, you've done a wonderful job.
My mouth is dry as it can be.
Good job, Katie.
Okay, we'll now have the public hearing. Those who wish to speak, please limit your comments to 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I think what I'll do first is I have a list of documents that people have sent. Christie, is Christie here, Christie Hudson?
No, sir.
Okay, all right. Will you read the letter from Tony Bradford? It's on page 4.
Okay. Tony Bradford, 553 Yellowbird Road, Blackstone, Virginia, 434-294-1356. April 16, 2021. It was written to Mr. Procyse. I would like this letter read during public delegations at the public hearing for the budget on 22 April 2021. First off, this is Tony Bradford, Nottoway County citizen. In no way should my opinions in this letter be misconstrued or speaking for the Blackstone Volunteer Fire Department, of which I am a member of. This is a private citizen giving input on an issue, not a member of the EMS agency. Mr. Shute had asked that 20% funding for Burkeville be reinstated for rescue services line items, and I agree completely. Transport agencies in the county do have more expenses. Yet I'd like to go one step further. I propose that Blackstone and Crew Fire be given an extra 10% each to their budget also for running the first responder programs. The two departments have never received any extra funding for the very vital life-saving services they provide from the county, and the cost of doing EMS business has risen significantly. Both departments have proved over the years that first responder programs have saved lives and have prevented major medical emergencies from becoming fatalities. I am sure some of the families of loved ones that they have saved would definitely agree with me. I also would like to request that the board consider a one-time $250 bonus to be given to each member of the 4 agencies that responded to incidents during the ice storm. The General Assembly recently passed a bill that localities could pay bonuses up to $600 per volunteer member that would be tax exempt. The fire chiefs and the squad captain could be allowed to determine the bonus eligibility requirements within their own organizations. For now, the board could budget total active members of the agency for a line item figure. Fire chiefs and squad captains could submit their amounts for the actual personnel eligible for the bonus, and the remaining funds could be transferred back to the general fund for other uses. Would you please forward this to the supervisors for their review prior to the next week's meeting? Thank you for your consideration of this request. Very respectfully, Tony Bradford.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nottoway Cares, Mr. Boswell.
Thank you. My name is Jack Boswell. Some time ago, the board was considering investigating the construction of a new animal shelter. You asked me to head a committee. You appointed that committee for me, and we have been working very diligently since that time to assist the board. The people that you put on that committee, I tell you, are hardworking. They have great ideas. They are dedicated, and 2 things about them. They love animals, and they love Nottoway County. And it shows. And besides, they do 99% of the work, so I don't have to do a lot. People come to me, when they heard about this, people have come to me in droves, and they ask me, what do we need a new shelter for? And the first thing I tell them is, go look at what we got. And some of them come back and say, wow, had no idea. I've been in there a lot of times, and I've looked at it, and I didn't know how bad it was either until just recently. Now, how do we support you? Of course, we're here to ask you to include in the budget the allocations for the necessary background work for the new shelter with the architects, et cetera. We also, we try to support you by giving you guidance, suggestions, ideas, from a group that is particularly attuned to the situation. What better thing to do than have a group of people that are looking at this almost every day and come to you with ideas. And not only are we going to provide you with those things, but we are going to provide you with some, or the county, with some financial help. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, and why do we need to do that? Let me tell you how dedicated this group is. They have looked so far into the future to say, if we're going to raise money for this thing, we need to get some big money. We need to get grants. We need to go to Petco and Purina. Buckingham County just got $125,000 in a two-stage grant from Petco for their new shelter. Money's out there. We can get it, but we need to have a start. We need to have architectural designs in hand. But these are the things that we are going to put in our application that I didn't even know existed. The drainage at the existing shelter is horrible. They don't have any traps built in. There's sewage smell in there at times. You can't put puppies and small animals in the right same cages with those drains because of safety issues. The floor, as you have heard, in the budget's got money in here for this. Maybe we can get started soon. It'll be unnecessary, but the floors are cracked and split, and to the point that they don't drain correctly. And I hate to say this, but the urine and stuff from one kennel flows out into the walkway and into the other kennels because it can't be diverted right. We don't have any power down there. I notice there's an alternate generator being considered in the budget. And when the power went out like it did recently, the two ladies that worked there at the time had to haul water in. We have a very insufficient laundry room down there with regular laundry, wash and dry, and no commercial. They take a lot of the stuff home and do it themselves. We don't have enough space to do anything. It's 1,000 square feet, 1,082 square feet. It's 27 years old. We don't have an adequate storage room. The ladies have got stuff stacked up in there where food is donated and bedding and medicine, cleaning supplies, all stacked up to get it off the floor. It's going to get ruined and get it up out. The existing office area in there is a joke. It's so small that nobody can operate out of that thing. It doubles as a break room for the people who work there. It's very cramped and it's inefficient workspace. There's no place to meet anybody that comes to visit or adopt. There are actually cracks in the walls of the place that allows air to come into the building. What we do, they caulk it. And then in the one it splits again, and they re-caulk it to seal it. There's one small isolation room in there for sick animals. No provision to separate sick dogs and cats, which is now it's grandfathered, but the new shelter will have to have it. It's required by the state. Our cages are rusted, et cetera. And one of the most horrible things that exists in there is no bathroom in that building. Believe it or not, the ladies that work there have to go up the hill to a building at the garbage center. And that same building is occupied from time to time by the trustee inmates from the prison who come in to work in the landfill. And that's where they have to go to use the bathroom. So this place is not only insufficient for animals, it's certainly no place for a person to work. And these ladies that work down there under those adverse conditions do an admirable job of keeping it clean. All the rooms are doing double duty. As I said, there's no space, there's no room for future growth. And last year, the adoptions that came out of that shelter were so unbelievably small, a handful. Nobody's going to go walk through mud and garbage to get down there to adopt a little animal. If you build this new shelter, people will come. Adoptions will, and we're trying to make it so a lot of the animals down there, we don't adopt them. We ship them out to other facilities who then try to adopt them out. But we're going to try to concentrate on adopting these animals. You've got to have a place where people come to see them. You got to have it. We're going to have volunteers to help, et cetera, with the staffing.
Okay. Mr. Boswell,
I think that's,
yes, time is up.
sir.
The time is up.
Yes, sir, thank you. I think that's everything, and then anytime anybody in the audience, and most of this was them, won't have a question, if they call me or come by, I'll be glad to try to answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Ball.
Mrs. Gilmore, is she here from the Friends of the Library? Okay.
I have two other speakers here for the animal shelter, so I didn't know if you were taking it all or not, but I just want that out.
No problem. How you doing?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm here on behalf of, I'm Matilda Conley, and this is Lauren Watkins. And we're here on behalf of the Friends of the Library of Blackstone. We're here begging, you know. But let me tell you why we're begging. Friends of the Library was, of Blackstone was founded back in the early 80s. And our mission was to receive and administer funds that support charitable, educational, and literary goals by stimulating public use and support, fostering continuous growth, and providing information about the Blackstone Library. However, since that time, though that's our initial mission, we've spread out, and we have given support not only to the Blackstone Library, but to the libraries in the county, because we have supported the things that have been county-wise. We've sponsored contests that were for children all over the county. A scary story contest, and a spring poetry contest. We've given, along with the Rotary, we've given dictionaries to every third grader in the county. For a number of years, we've been involved for last 3, I think. We have supported the summer reading programs. Nottoway Reads. We established a literary guild at one time that everybody in the county was invited to. We, at the Grand Illumination, give away books to any child that comes to the Grand Illumination, and you all know the kids come from all over. And then we've had treats in the park for kids, and when we first started that, we were doing crafts, and we had over 400 kids the first year. It's calmed down a little bit because we kind of limited, not from out of county. But in the meantime, we started in the early, well, it was 2007, we first opened our Book Inn, which is the only bookstore in the county. And we opened that with the idea of helping to fund our programs for the Friends of the Library. And we did all the work ourselves. Everything is volunteer. And Bobby Daniels graciously gave us the use of the building. And over the course of the years, we have given over, how much?
In the past 5 years, a total of $13,000 direct financial investment into the Library of Nottoway County.
And that's just the last 5 years.
In 2021 alone, we gave $1,250 to Nottoway County Public Library for the Hoopla subscription, which is an app. It's an online program where you can get audiobooks, movies, ebooks, music. So
Everything that's important.
Yeah, we paid for half of it, and the Friends of Crew paid for the other half of it. So it was a $2,500 subscription.
And that's available to everybody in Nottoway County.
Anybody who's a member.
And that's just since January. Now, we have been the Book Inn has been in its present location since 2006 we got it. We opened in 2007. And the building has just been sold back in the fall. And the new owner now wants rent. And we've not been paying rent. It was a gift from Bobby Daniels, and one for which we were very grateful. But the new owner wants rent, and to pay rent, we lose the funds that we've been giving to the library. Because during the pandemic, the sales have not been such that we would have a lot of extra. We are making some, but not a lot of that. But if we have to pay that rent, it's going to be difficult. So we've come asking you if there is some way that you can help contribute to the rent for us until such time as we can get sorted out and sales pick up and maybe we'll have to find a new venue. We don't know yet, but we need help, financial help.
You're talking about 2,400?
$2,400, yes.
Yes, sir.
And, because it's 200, and seeing, she's also asking us to help pay for some of the wiring and things that have to be done. And so we know that it's going to end up being more than that, but that's what the rent will be. And if we could have help there, we would be very, very grateful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There were two more that Jack had with the animal shelter. Two more people for the animal shelter to speak.
Do you want me to announce that?
Yes, the two more, Jack, that you have for the animal shelter. Who would? Okay, Ms. Wilkerson.
Okay. Ms. Wilkerson, how are you?
I am fine.
Good.
I am Sally Wilkerson. I live at 410 West Virginia Avenue in Crewe, Virginia. And for the past 2 years, I have served the former board and your present board as your representative on the committee to raise funds for the animal control. I am here to commend you for the budget that you have before you and hope you will keep the line item for the animal control intact as you go through the approval. My part, Jack has explained to you, and I know you all are well aware of all the deficits that we have. One of the things that I look forward to is being able to gain more funding along with the rest of our group. And I would like the public to know that this group does not choose the location, nor do we choose any of the building. It is all your all's final word. We are here for funding and suggestions when you request. And I want the public to know that we are here to serve the board. We have been actively from, I think, day one, planning on how is best to go about raising funds. And the first thing that you have to do is become a tax-exempt entity. And those of you who have worked with organizations and all know that that can be a challenge and a journey in itself. And over the 2 years, through perseverance of our leader and our members, we have gained that. And in doing so, this gives us the ability to seek the funding that we need to support this task to completion. What happens is that as we go through the various forms and all, as we look at grants and seek and even get ready to go out and approach businesses and all, we have to be able to answer the question, well, what has the county put into this, from the citizens? And this says to us that you will invest a great amount of encouragement, monetary, to set this project forth. We came together with a board that changed shortly within about 6 months after we were formed. And the new board came aboard last January. And I know this time last year, it's hard to take one pie and divide it up among a whole group so that everybody is funded and your citizens have what is needed to move forward. This year, with you coming together and looking to help the animal control with the funds that would give us the opportunity to have the architect form the plans and the cost, and even to the point of maybe the bidding, it makes our job as we go out and raise funds, it gives us the information and all that we need to help with the citizens to pay the funding for this project. So please keep this in the budget. It is for a a very good investment as we look to the future for the grants, the fundraising, the opportunities that we've worked on. And thank you for your time. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank
you.
you.
Is it Ms. Elzay?
It's another, Ms. Elzay?
Ms. Elzay?
Good evening.
That's really good news about the generator and the repairs. We didn't realize that was in the budget. Maybe we'll be able to move the new generator to the new shelter. And that's one thing that we can deduct from the expense list. Jack's talked about the need. Don't need to say anything more about that. But let me just say a little bit about the value added in doing this, period. It's more about, certainly it's about improving a situation that he's correcting. It's also very much about adding value. The things that will be added that will really help residents, as well as certainly the animals of this county, start with the location. We all know the accessibility and visibility, how important that is. That's been talked about. There'll be an increased capability to strengthen the ability to comply with state requirements. There have been issues with that over time. Frankly, there are things with the shelter now that probably could be written up for violations, but haven't been, that have just to do with the physical facility, not with the care of the animals. Certainly, the capacity to house animals, cats and dogs, in all state of need and situation, whether they're surrendered, rescued, whether they have special needs, is very inadequate now. The new shelter would correct all that. There's also a great potential and plan to facilitate and accommodate volunteers. There are volunteers that for a long time in this county have wanted to help with the shelter, and they haven't been able to for various reasons. And then adoptions, like Jack talked about. One of the main goals of the shelter is to move from dependency on transfers to rescue groups to adopt animals and facilitate their adoption on site. This is something that most shelters do, not just in Virginia, but everywhere. The ways to do it are not complicated, and it's entirely possible to do it in a new shelter. Frankly, if it wasn't for the ability of the animal control officers to network with other rescue groups, the euthanasia rate at this shelter would be higher because the adoptions just wouldn't happen on site. Temporary housing of residents, pets during natural disasters would also be a possibility in the new shelter. And also educational programs with schools and community groups. Don't know that we've ever done that here in Nottoway. A lot of shelters do it. There's enormous potential for it. And those things are just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I'd also like to say just one thing very quickly about the process. The fundraising that's been talked about, even the funding that goes into this budget proposal, certainly is driven by the proposed cost and final decision on the shelter. We're now waiting on a conceptual design and budget estimate from the architects, as you very well know, since it's your decision. Even allowing all the time that's needed to review that plan, debate that plan, in a way, at least from the perspective of our group, that is very transparent, very inclusive of people in the county. We do hope there will be a public hearing. The plans will be shared. After all that's done, and then you all make the decision, you approve whatever ultimately turns out to be the design and the cost of the shelter. Formal fundraising will begin, and then the next step to do the final design of the shelter, construction drawings, and all those other things necessary to bid it for construction, the money in the budget this year would cover. And it's reasonable to expect that we would get to that stage in this fiscal year. So to have money in the budget to do that final design is critical to keep the project going. Construction is not getting any cheaper, whether it's for a shelter or a shed. So the longer that we delay, the more that becomes an issue. We're very enthusiastic. We think that the more that everybody learns about this project, and that's why we welcome being able to talk about the design, that the enthusiasm will be shared. Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you, Ms. Ellison.
Is there anyone else from Nottaway Cares? Okay. Okay. Virginia Loggers. Mr. Jenkins?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
board members,
Seeing you.
Mr. Prosize, staff, thank you so much for allowing us to make this presentation on behalf of Virginia Loggers. And tonight, I actually represent, our folks here, some logging companies. If they would just stand and be recognized, I'd appreciate it, so you'll know that these are local folks. Those that I called and could not make it tonight, thank you, that also express their express their sincere appreciation for your consideration. And my wife and I, Nanette, we're from Goochland, but we represent small family-owned businesses that are engaged in the logging company type enterprise across the Commonwealth. And we're really proud to be representing them and trying to help them to seek some tax relief. And the relief that we're seeking tonight is for your two things. One, for you to recognize that forest harvesting is much like farming, and the farm machinery that is now in the tax code that you are allowed to give exemption from is also now been recognized unanimously with the unanimous support of the Virginia Farm Bureau and all their 33,000 producer members, and the full support of both houses of the General Assembly and then the governor, that forest harvesting is exactly like farm. And the farm machinery actually is in the title now where you have the option to exempt the personal property and the machinery and tools taxes. So if you look at that, for instance, to get right to the point, if you look at on your proposed budget, in the year that's ending now and your proposal for the next year, in your under your item for farm machinery, and there's zero per $100 and no increases expected. But when you read that and you took and I've given you a package, I will not cover everything in there, but they will leave you some very good information. I will try to cover the most important points within the time that you've allowed. So there is a point in there for the Virginia Acts of Assembly, and I'll just read that quickly to you to kind of emphasize that forest harvesting equipment is very much like a farm machinery, and that was recognized by law. In fact, item 14 reads, farm machinery and farm implements other than the farm machinery and farm implements described in subdivisions 8 and 10, which shall include equipment and machinery used for forest harvesting and silvicultural activities. So essentially, perhaps one could say that when this was granted for farm machinery, the traditional farm machinery years ago, that this was simply left out. Maybe it wasn't really thought about. But we've given it a lot of thought, and there was a lot of people that now support that, and it is now law. And we hope that's what you will do, is to recognize that it is that forest harvesting and farm machinery, it's one and the same, and it's in the same tax code that will now allow you to make the full exemption. But why would we want you to do that? Why do we come to this point? And there's some few points I'd just like to make so that you will see what it's like to be in the logging business. And I think maybe whatever you think you know about logging and loggers, maybe I can shed some light on some of the other aspects of this particular industry that you may not know. And so, I'll kind of cover some of the things you would like to go along. First of all, I'd like to just point out, like farming, forest harvesting provides some essential fiber and wood products. Everything that we harvest gets used in your home. Everyone needs them, and they're essential as farm food. So that's one thing that makes us very similar. The next item, page 3, I wanted you to look at these pictures. Pictures say 1,000 words. And these are people in this picture that represent logging businesses across the state. They're small family-owned businesses. In this picture alone, there are 3 generations. And for loggers, that's pretty much the essential core of how we get our continuation of logging. There are only a few loggers in the entire state of Virginia, and there are no large corporations that handle logging. It's all done by small family-owned businesses. And without them, there wouldn't be a stick of wood that could be cut because they're just the companies don't exist. But this picture shows a couple of things I want to point out. Very similarly, to farming, but they also work in one of the world's most dangerous work. And the highest per capita deaths and accidents have occurred in logging. It's still very high, even with mechanized logging. And the other thing that I'd like to point out is just the more danger of the economy of being in logging. The ups and downs of daily price fluctuations, daily price quote. Yes, sir.
Your 5 minutes to say.
Is it already up?
Yes, sir.
Well, what I would say is, please take note of this. We're asking for the tax exemption. There's other information in here I hope you'll look at. I'd be happy to answer any questions should you have any. I'd like to thank you for your time, and we ask for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience who would like? Mayor.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Billy Cole. I'm speaking as the mayor of the town of Blackstone. I want to apologize up front for the tardiness of this request as well as the significance of this request. But for the last 20 years, many of y'all may know that Blackstone Volunteer Fire Department has had the only ladder truck in the county. The town had a 1972 or 73 model for a number of years. It ran its course. In 2010, we bought a 1989 model. That ran its course. We do not have a ladder truck in operation because the one we have we spent thousands upon thousands repairing, and it's not safe for our volunteers to operate. So, make a long story short, town manager and I, with the backing of town council, with the support of you, Mr. Chairman, and Brookville Mayor Brian Welch and crew Mayor Phil Muskovic, have been reaching out to Congresswoman Spanberger about a federal appropriation for the ladder truck. A new ladder truck costs $1.6 million. Used ones can go a little bit under $1 million, but we today, at 12 noon today, when our conference call ended with Ms. Spanberger's staff, they've been outstanding, by the way, Blackstone's eligible for up to 55% of the expense. So that means Blackstone would have to bear the remaining 45%, which we're willing to do a lot of. Congresswoman Spanberger's staff said it would help the application to have support from FASC, which we're working on, support from the Adjutant General, and perhaps some funding from the National Guard, which we're working on, and also some sort of commitment or funding from the local county board of supervisors. Now, I want to state up front, Mayor Muskovic, when he kindly signed the joint letter that went to Representative Spanberger, stipulated he could only do so as long as there be no local funding required. I've tried to reach out to Mayor Phil tonight. I think he's in a budget work session, so I don't want to do anything to undermine that agreement or the goodwill or for Blackstone to be perceived as getting one up on crew or one up on Burkeville. But the fact of the matter is the ladder truck doesn't just look good in photos. It goes to every structure fire. It has saved a number of lives and structures in Nottoway County and other towns. It's gone to crew fires. I don't know if it's gone to a Burkeville fire or not, but I do know one of the mistakes this mayor made when FASC was coming, we were all so elated, we did not put demands on FASC. We in Blackstone did not say, for example, you're going to tear up our roads building FASC. They tore up Dinwiddie Avenue. But when you're the cheerleader who never gets asked to the prom and the best-looking quarterback you've seen in a long time comes in town, which is what happened in 2010, 2011, you just say, thank you, I'm going to the prom. We also did not think about the high-rise buildings that FASC has. And, oh, by the way, the buildings that Burkeville deals with. And I will say a shout-out to John Shute. What he tells you about their EMS situation, they're getting run to death in Burkeville. Need a duty crew at the Correctional Center. Need a duty crew at Piedmont Geriatric. Hear it all the time. The first responders are getting abused in Nottoway County. But I'm here tonight to ask y'all, drum roll please, $200,000. And I thank you for your consideration. I don't envy your task. Been some great speakers tonight. And I don't like doing business like this. I don't like coming last minute. I'm just responding to that which I was provided today with myself, Philippa Norbeck, Jesse Durrett, Congresswoman Spanberger's office, and Miss Melody at the Commonwealth Regional Council, who's phenomenal, phenomenal. Thank y'all.
You're talking about 200,000.
Yes, sir, that's the request. And I thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak? Mr. Shute.
Yes, I'm here, Chief of Purple Fire Department, make sure I clear that up. I did bring up last time about the allocation, the way that the rescue services funding is going to be allocated. I did speak with Katie this week, matter of fact, and I'm still at the same place. I get $20,000 a year to do ambulance service in Burkeville, which if you figure there were 700 some calls, well, roughly 600 of them were in Nottoway County, so that comes out somewhere around $33 a call that I'm being compensated. And I want to correct, you know, I said my funding was cut. My funding's not been cut, but the allocation, the way it was calculated, has been changed. So that where you added money into the rescue services funding and you added money into the fire departments, there's 3 fire departments. Each of us gets the same amount of money. There are 3 EMS stations in this county. There's the crew rescue squad, the rescue squad building and crew, the substation in Blackstone, and Burkeville Fire Department runs an ambulance service out of its station. So when we talk about funding, I think if you're going to raise the rescue services funding, that because we have an ambulance service, we should be considered in that. And whether you consider it as a separate line item or otherwise, I'm not here to take away from any first responders, just like Mr. Golden said, that everybody's under the gun, but, you know, right is right. The citizens of the western portion of Nottoway County deserve exactly the same services as anybody else, anywhere else in the county. So I'm going to speak for the fire department, try to secure that. I told Katie that I would try to work with whatever was done, but that needs not to be overlooked because it has been, and it was not intentional. I applaud everybody that works on the budget. I have to do a budget too. I know how difficult it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shute.
Thank you, Ms. Shute.
Mr. Abbott?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Prosat. Change has come to Nottoway County in ways that were not anticipated a year ago. The method this budget was addressed is one of them. This type of budget is called a needs budget. This type of budget is seriously more transparent than other types. However, it will require constant attention to detail. I believe it is the type of change the county needs. Ms. Tomer has done an outstanding job remodeling what is contained in this budget. Unfortunately, there are other sources that impact the numbers. We are moving from the previous administration's controlled documents to a needs-based program where clarity becomes a greater necessity. As an example, the capital improvement part of the budget, it's in there, just not called capital improvement. So some of the changes are still needed, especially for clarity. At some point, the capital improvements line item needs to be real and complete, beginning to end, with specific gateways to measure progress, cost, effectiveness, and actions, etc. We've all heard or read about legal fees. Is $58,000 what this board feels is needed for fiscal year 21-22? At the current pace, that amount would be used up in about 6 months. In a needs-based budget, those other line items are needs-based too. Where will the board go to find the next $58,000? Now, I've overheard a number of you say that as long as you sit on this board, you'll have a lawyer. Well, you've always had a lawyer. Now you have an entire law firm. There are a number of ways to address that too, if and when the board becomes willing to discuss other options. The legal services each of you believe you'll need and the cost impact that is favorable to current estimates. So I ask, are issues more important than solutions? Again, are issues more important than solutions? I hope I'm not the only one that believes solutions drive a needs-based budget. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Anyone else to speak? Okay. Anything from the board members?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. As far as Mr. Tony Bradford goes, I think his idea is.
Mr. Chairman, a point of procedure, you need to close the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're exactly right. The public hearing is now closed. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay. I think Mr. Tony Bradford was pretty spot on. I mean, we've seen the needs. I know, I don't need to tell some of the members on the board this. I mean, you guys have served on the emergency services committees and stuff, and y'all know much more.
We're going to have to go back and discuss what we have heard tonight.
Yes, sir.
So we'll do that at that particular time.
Okay. All right. So any of these questions concerning that, are we going to address that at that point, or do I ask these questions now? Like one in particular, like I think there may be a solution to what the fire department is asking for.
We're going to discuss that. We have to come back together before we adopt the budget.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. You have it?
No.
Dan, do you have it?
I can just save my remarks for when we come back together. I've got some remarks about some of the requests, and obviously a lot of good requests, and I would like to support some of them.
Helen?
No, I don't have anything right now. Okay. Just want to think about what we heard today.
Okay. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you, Steve.